The night was silent, only the wind howling through the broken stones of the old tower. The alien girl stood at the very top, her bare feet on the cold surface. Her long silver hair whipping in the wind like threads of moonlight. Her eyes were fixed on the darkness below, a never-ending drop that promised to end her pain forever. Her chest rose and fell as if every breath hurt her. She had walked far, through ruins, forests and rivers, but now she had nowhere else to go. Her hands trembled as she held them close to her chest, scars faintly glowing against her pale skin, reminders of chains that once bound her. The stars above looked cruel, shining brightly as if mocking her loneliness. She whispered to herself, words so soft the wind nearly stole them. No more. I cannot carry this anymore. Her voice broke and she closed her eyes. One step forward and it would all be over. Down below, a human traveler was walking the lonely road, his lantern swaying with every step. He was tired from the long journey. But when he looked up, his heart froze. There she was, standing on the edge like a broken angel ready to fall. He dropped his bag without thinking, the sound echoing in the night. Wait! He shouted, his voice raw, carried by the wind. The alien girl's ears twitched at the sound, her eyes opening slowly. She looked down, her face blank, her lips parting as if she wanted to tell him to leave, but she said nothing. The human's heart pounded. He had seen people in despair before, but never something like this. Never someone who looked so close to vanishing. Don't, he called again, don't do it. His words shook with urgency, yet the girl only tilted her head, her expression unreadable. The tower groaned in the wind, loose stones falling down the walls. The human took a step closer, his lantern casting a soft glow. He raised his hand as if reaching out, though she was far above him. Her eyes caught the faint light, and for a moment they reflected a hidden sorrow so deep it made his chest ache. Go away, she finally whispered, her voice cutting through. The air, her tone carried no anger, only emptiness. This is not your fight. Not your life, but the human shook his head, his voice stronger this time. If you jump, then I'll climb up there and jump with you. The words spilled out before he could stop them, but they carried a weight of truth. The alien girl's eyes widened. For the first time, the cold mask cracked, surprise flashing across her face. She leaned forward slightly, not to fall, but to see him clearer. You're lying, she said softly. Though her voice trembled, the human clenched, his fists, his eyes never leaving hers. I'm not lying. No one should leave this world alone, not while I stand here. He took another step closer, his boots scraping the gravel, his heart racing. The wind screamed between them. As if testing the strength of his words, the girl's lips quivered. But she forced them still. Inside her heart, something stirred. Something she thought was long dead. Memories of laughter, of family, of belonging. All swept away years ago, yet now this stranger's words pulled at the fragile threads of her soul. Her chest tightened, her knees felt weak. Why would a human, someone she had never met, say such things? The night seemed to hold its breath. The lantern light flickered against the stone, casting their shadows long and uncertain. She closed her eyes again. But this time not to surrender. This time not to surrender. The war between ending everything and listening to the strange, reckless voice below. Her toes curled against the stone edge. She felt the pull of the abyss, but also the warmth in his voice. For the first time in years, she hesitated. Her heart whispered, maybe. Not yet, the human saw it. The tiny shift in her body, the way she leaned back, ever so slightly, his chest filled with a rush of hope. Please, he said again, his voice softer now. Not a command, but a plea. You don't even know me. But if you step down, you'll know you're not alone anymore. The alien girl opened her eyes slowly, silver tears glistening as they caught the starlight. The tower still howled with the storm, but in that moment she heard something louder. His voice, his promise. And for the first time in so long, she took a step backward, away from the edge, but the night was not finished testing them. A stone crumbled beneath her foot, the sound sharp and final. She gasped as her balance shifted, her arms flailing. The human lunged forward instinctively, though still far below, his heart screaming. The girl's body teetered dangerously, her breath caught in her throat, and then silence. Would she fall, or would fate give her one more chance? To be continued. The alien girl's body swayed dangerously, the crumbling stone falling into the darkness below. Her breath caught in her chest. Her arms spread wide, her heart pounding louder than the storm around her. For one terrifying moment she thought she would fall, that everything would end right here, but her toes found solid ground. And she staggered backward, away from the edge, gasping for air, down below. The human let out a sharp breath he had been holding. His lantern flickered in his shaking hand, but his eyes never left her. He had seen death before, but this was different. This was fragile life, still fighting not to disappear. He cupped his hands and shouted again, his voice carried by the night. "You don't have to do this. Not tonight, not like this." The alien girl trembled, her silver tears glistening. Against her pale cheeks, her eyes locked on him, confused, angry, and afraid all at once. "Why?" She called out, her voice breaking. "Why stop me? You don't even know me." Her words were heavy, filled with bitterness and despair. As if the world had taught her no one cared, the human took a step closer to the base of the tower. His boots crunching against the gravel. "I don't need to know you," he answered firmly. "I only know that you matter." His voice was not soft now, it was strong. Filled with something that cut through her doubt, the wind whipped between them. But she heard every word, clear and undeniable. The girl's knees weakened, and she sank down onto the cold stones of the tower's edge. Her hands clutched her head, pulling at her hair, her shoulders shaking as silent sobs escaped her. She had been called worthless, unwanted, broken so many times that she believed it. Yet here was a stranger who spoke as if her life had weight, as if her existence carried meaning. "You lie," she whispered through her tears. "You have to be lying. No one ever said that to me." Her voice was small, like a child's voice, raw and unprotected. The human shook his head, his lantern swaying in his grip. "I don't lie about this. I know what it feels like to stand where you are, to want everything to end." His words grew quieter, almost a confession, but I chose to keep walking, and I found reasons to live again. The alien girl's sobs slowed, her ears twitching. As she listened, her scarred hands lowered, and she looked down at him once more. "You felt this too?" she asked, her voice fragile, as if afraid of the answer. The human nodded, his eyes dark with memory. "Yes, I did. And if I had given up, I would never have known the people who needed me later." She blinked, her tears falling. Freely now, and for the first time, she felt the words strike deep. Her heart, wrapped in layers of pain, cracked just slightly, letting in a flicker of warmth, but fear still clung to her voice. Sharp and trembling. "Even if I step back, even if I live, what then? My people cast me away. My home is gone. There is nothing left for me." The human's chest tightened at her words. He could hear the truth in them. She was not only ready to die because of sorrow. She was ready because she believed she had no place in the universe. He lifted his face toward her, his voice firm again. "Then you can make a new place with your own hands, and if no one else will stand beside you, I will." The alien girl's lips parted, but no words came. She was stunned, unable to process what she had just heard. A stranger offering to stand with her without knowing her. Without asking for anything, her heart hammered, her mind screaming that it was impossible. Yet the warmth in his tone silenced the voices of despair. She wrapped her arms around herself, rocking slightly as if fighting an invisible storm. The night pressed heavy on her shoulders, but she did not rise to the edge again. Instead, she stayed seated, staring down at him. Why? She whispered once more, her voice breaking like shattered glass. Why care about me at all? The human looked at her, and though the lantern light barely reached his face, she saw something there: honesty. His reply came like a quiet fire, burning but steady. Because I refuse to let anyone believe they are nothing, his words echoed. Up the tower, carried by the wind, settling deep into her chest for the first time in years. She felt her breath ease just a little. The crushing weight inside her did not vanish, but it shifted, giving space for something else. She touched her chest lightly, as if testing if her heart was still hers. And she realized she had not stepped forward again. Instead, she had stepped backward, closer to life. The human straightened his back, gripping his lantern tighter. I'm climbing up, he called, his voice firm. I won't leave you up there alone. The alien girl froze, panic flashing in her eyes. No, don't. It's dangerous. The stones will break, you'll fall. But he only shook his head. Determination etched in his stance. I would rather fall trying to reach you than walk away and let you die. Her breath caught, the sincerity in his words, hitting her harder than any weapon. She could not speak, could only watch as he began searching for a way up the tower. The night was far from over. The girl sat trembling, torn between pushing him away and begging him not to stop. She hugged her knees, silver tears rolling down, and for the first time in her broken life, she whispered something to herself she never thought she would. Maybe? I don't want to die tonight. To be continued. Asterisk, the tower stones were cold beneath the alien girl's knees, her body trembling as if the night air had seeped into her very bones. Her eyes, still wet with tears, stayed locked on the human. Below, his lantern glowing faintly in the stormy dark. She wanted to push him away, to tell him to stop climbing. But deep inside, she could not. Something in his words had struck her heart like a spark landing on dry wood. The human began to climb. The broken stones, his hands gripping sharp edges, his boots scraping against the cracks. Every movement was careful but determined. As if he had done this 1,000 times before, the lantern swung from his side, its light casting fleeting shadows across the tower walls. The girl's breath caught in her throat, fear rising not for herself this time, but for him. You're going to fall, she whispered, though the wind nearly stole her voice away. But the human only glanced up, his eyes steady, his jaw firm. Then I'll fall trying, he called back, his voice echoing in the hollow night. Her chest tightened, her mind screaming that no one had ever spoken such words for her sake. Step by step, he climbed higher, sweat beading across his brow despite the cold. The tower groaned beneath the weight of his body, stones shifting, dust falling, yet his focus never wavered. His eyes fixed on the girl above, he was not climbing to conquer the tower, he was climbing to reach her. The girl shuffled backward from the edge, her bare feet scraping against the stone. It was not much, only a single step, but it felt like crossing an ocean. Her heart raced wildly, and she clutched her arms tighter around herself. For the first time in years, she had chosen not to lean into death, but to lean away from it. The human noticed, and his heart surged with hope. You stepped back, he said softly, his words filled with relief. You don't know how much that means. The alien girl blinked at him, confusion flickering in her gaze. Her voice came out fragile, like dry leaves in the wind. Why does it mean anything to you? Why care if I step forward or back? Her question was sharp, almost angry. Yet beneath it trembled a desperate need for an answer. The human paused in his climb, looking up at her with honest eyes. "Because it proves you still want to live, even if you don't believe it yet," he replied. His voice carried warmth, firm but gentle. She stared at him in silence, his words digging deep, pulling at roots of pain she thought had long turned to stone. Her lip trembled, and she looked away quickly. Afraid he might see the cracks forming in her mask, the wind howled again, carrying a distant echo of laughter, her memories, cruel and haunting. She remembered voices mocking her, chains biting her skin, nights spent alone in the dark. Her people had spat on her, cursed her existence, called her a burden. Those voices whispered now, reminding her that she was nothing, that she should jump. But then came the human's voice, louder, clearer, breaking through like a torch in darkness. "You're not nothing," he said, almost as if reading her thoughts. "You are here, alive, and that is enough to matter." Her hands clenched against the stone, her tears spilling again. She whispered back, her voice trembling with disbelief, "No one has ever said that to me." Not once. The human's heart ached at her words, but he did not stop climbing. "Then I'll be the first, and I won't be the last," he promised when he finally pulled himself high enough. He reached the narrow ledge where she sat. His chest rose and fell heavily, sweat mixing with dust across his face. The lantern swung at his side, casting warm light over her pale features. She looked smaller up close, not the strong figure she pretended to be, but a wounded soul barely holding together. He crouched a few feet away, careful not to startle her. "I'm here now," he said quietly, his voice steady but soft. "You don't have to carry this weight alone anymore." The alien girl hugged her knees tighter, her silver eyes watching him with suspicion and longing. "Why?" she asked again, her voice shaking. "Why would you climb for me? Why bleed your hands for me? You don't even know my name." Her words dripped with pain, with the fear of betrayal she had known all her life. The human held her gaze, his eyes calm and unflinching. "Because you needed someone, and I was here," he answered simply. The silence that followed was heavy, but not empty. The girl felt the truth in his voice. No grand speeches, no false promises, only raw honesty. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, as if her heart was trying to keep pace with the moment. She lowered her forehead to her knees, whispering softly, "I don't deserve this. I don't deserve you climbing for me." The human leaned forward, his voice firm yet kind. "You deserve to live, and that's enough." The words settled into her soul like seeds pressed into dry soil. She didn't know if they would grow, if she could ever believe them fully, but for now, she had taken one step back from death, and that was something. The human, sitting only a breath away, saw it too, and his heart knew this was just the beginning. The night stretched on, the wind restless, the stars unblinking, but on the edge of the tower, a fragile bond had been formed, a bond that would decide not only her fate, but his as well, and those shadows still lingered. The first step back had already been taken, to be continued. Asterisk. The old tower creaked under the weight of silence. The wind carried dust and whispers through its hollow stones. The alien girl sat curled against the wall, her knees to her chest, her arms wrapped tight as if to hold herself together. The human rested a few feet away, careful not to crowd her, his lantern glowing faintly between them. For a while, neither spoke. Only the sound of their breathing filled the night. The girl's silver eyes stared into the flames of the lantern as if it might swallow her whole. Her lips trembled, but no words came at first. She bit them back like secrets too heavy to carry. The human waited, patient, his hands rough and bleeding from the climb, but his eyes soft. Finally, her voice broke the silence, low and fragile. "You should not have climbed," she whispered, her tone heavy with shame. "You don't know who I am." "What I am?" The human leaned forward slightly, his brow furrowed. "Then tell me," he said gently. "I'll listen." The girl laughed bitterly. Though no joy touched her face, her voice cracked as she spoke. "My people call me cursed. A shadow born from disgrace." She pulled at the ragged cloth around her wrists, showing faint scars glowing like old burns. "They bound me," she said softly, her voice trembling. "They marked me as unworthy. Said I carried shame in my blood." Her words spilled like broken glass, cutting her as she remembered. "They cast me out, made me live with the beasts of the forest, called me less than dirt." The human's fists tightened, anger flashing in his chest, but he stayed calm for her sake. "You were just a child," he said, his tone heavy. "No one deserves that." The girl flinched as if the kindness itself burned. Her eyes lifted to his, wide with disbelief. "You don't understand," she whispered. "They took everything, my family, my name, even my voice." She touched her throat, trembling. "For years I did not speak a single word because I believed them. I believed I was nothing." Her tears glimmered in the lantern light, sliding down her cheeks like rivers carving stone. "I wanted to end it so their voices would stop echoing in my head." The human moved closer, careful, his presence steady. "And warm? They lied to you," he said softly, each word deliberate. "They feared you? Or hated what they could not control. But that does not make you nothing." His eyes met hers, firm as steel yet gentle as firelight. Her chest rose sharply, her breath unsteady, her fingers curled tight against her knees. "Then why does it still hurt?" she cried suddenly, her voice raw and trembling. "Why do I still feel chains even when they are gone?" The human's heart ached, but he did not look away. "Because pain does not vanish with time," he said slowly. "It stays until someone helps carry it." He placed a hand over his chest, his voice stronger now. "Let me carry some of yours." The girl's breath caught, her tears spilling faster. "No one ever offered that," she whispered, shaking her head. "No one ever wanted my burden." Her voice broke into sobs, heavy and unstoppable. The human did not reach for her yet. He only stayed, letting her grief spill like a storm. He knew this was not weakness, was survival. Her soul screaming after years of silence. When her cries finally slowed, he spoke again, quiet but firm. "They made you believe you had no worth, but I see you." Her eyes lifted, silver and shining through tears. "You see nothing," she whispered, bitter and trembling. "You see a broken girl, an outcast." The human shook his head, his voice sharp now. "I see someone still alive after everything," he said fiercely. "I see someone who stood at the edge and still stepped back, even if only once." His words burned through the air like fire, pushing against the storm of her despair. "You're stronger than you know, and I won't let you forget it." The girl stared at him, trembling, her lips parted as if to deny it, but no words came. Only the sound of her shallow breaths. Her chest tightened as memories clawed at her. But his words wrapped around her like a shield. And for the first time she felt a strange warmth fighting against the cold inside her. She leaned her head against the stone wall, her body exhausted from the weight of her confession. The human stayed beside her, the lantern burning low, its glow soft and steady. "Rest," he murmured, his tone gentle. "You've carried too much for too long." Her eyes fluttered shut, her lashes wet. But before sleep could claim her, she whispered one last truth. "If they know I live, they will come for me. They will finish what they started." Her words lingered in the cold night air. The human's eyes hardened, his voice calm but unshakable. "Then let them come," he said, his hand tightening into a fist. They'll find me standing beside you. The alien girl's breath caught, her body shivering at the weight of his promise, and as her eyes finally closed, a fragile spark of trust flickered within her broken heart. The tower groaned in the storm. The stars watched in silence, but in the ruined shadows, a truth had been shared. Her past was scarred, her soul shattered, but she was no longer completely alone, and for the first time in years, she dared to believe her story was not yet over, to be continued. The fire in the small lantern flickered weakly, casting long shadows across the crumbling stones of the tower. The alien girl sat with her arms wrapped around her knees, her face pale, her silver eyes tired from tears. The human sat near her, his body weary from the climb, his hands raw from the stone, yet his eyes steady. For a while they said nothing, but the silence was not empty. It was heavy, full of unspoken promises waiting to be born. The girl finally broke the silence, her voice soft and trembling. You don't understand. They will not stop. If they know I live, they will hunt me until my blood stains the ground. Her words carried no fear, only certainty. As if she had already accepted that fate, she turned her face away, her hair falling like a curtain to hide her tears. The human leaned closer, his voice steady but strong. Then let them come, he said, his words sharp against the night. They will not take you while I live. The girl's head snapped up, her eyes wide with disbelief. You cannot say that, she whispered, her voice trembling. You are only one man. They are many. They are stronger. They hate me more than you can imagine. Her chest heaved, her hands shaking as she clutched the fabric of her clothes. You will die if you try to protect me. The human did not flinch, his eyes locked on hers. Maybe, he admitted, his voice calm. But I would rather die keeping my promise than live watching you give up. His words rang through the hollow night like the toll of a bell. The girl's lips parted, but no sound came. She stared at him, stunned by the fire in his eyes. Her own voice broke as she whispered, Why? Why do you care this much? Her tone was raw, desperate, as if she needed an answer that made sense. The human leaned back slightly, his face lit by the lantern glow. Because no one should face the world alone, he said, his voice deep and certain, and because I see someone worth standing beside, even if you don't see it yet. The girl's breath caught, her chest tightening painfully. Her whole life had been voices telling her she was nothing. But here was one voice refusing to let her believe it. She shook her head, her tears returning. You'll regret it. If you stand with me, you'll suffer like I have. Her words were broken, yet her heart longed to believe otherwise. The human's answer came like steel wrapped in warmth. Then let me suffer with you, not leave you to it alone, he said. His tone was not loud, but it struck her harder than thunder. Her body shivered, her soul fighting the weight of hope that threatened to return. Her lips trembled, and at last she asked, Will you truly stay? The human nodded, his expression firm. I promise, he said simply. No hesitation, no doubt. The word promise lingered in the cold air, wrapping around them like an invisible shield. The girl felt her heart pound, every beat echoing. Louder than the storm outside, her mind screamed to reject it, to deny him before he left her like all the others. But her soul clung desperately to those words, fragile yet powerful. She lowered her head, tears dripping onto the stone. You are a fool, she whispered, her voice shaking, but maybe. You are the first fool I want to believe. The human gave a faint smile, though sadness flickered in his eyes. Then believe me, he said, because no matter how dark the night gets, I will not walk away from you. The girl swallowed hard, her hands curling against her chest. It was not a cure for her pain, but it was the first rope pulling her from the abyss. The wind howled outside, rattling the tower. But the fire between them held. The human reached into his bag. Pulling out a piece of cloth and wrapping his wounded hand, the girl watched him. Quietly, her gaze lingering on the blood smeared across his skin. For the first time in years, she felt guilt not for existing, but for letting someone fight for her. "You were hurt because of me," she whispered, her voice soft. The human shook his head. Dismissing it with ease, "I bleed by choice," he said, "and if I must bleed again, I will." The girl's chest tightened. Her silver eyes glistening once more, her lips trembled as she whispered, "Then, maybe I will try. Maybe I will take one more step forward tomorrow." Her words were uncertain, fragile like glass, but they carried something new. The human's heart warmed at her confession. "Then tomorrow, we'll face it together," he said. The lantern's flame flickered lower, the night pressing in around them. But in that fragile circle of light, something unbreakable had been born. A promise, simple yet powerful. Tying two broken souls together, the girl leaned against the wall, her breathing finally slowing. As her eyes closed, she whispered again, so soft he barely heard, "Don't leave me." The human leaned his head back against the stone. His answer quiet but firm, "Never." And with that single word, the night seemed less cruel. The stars above still burned cold. The tower still groaned. But for the first time, the alien girl felt the shadow of hope settling inside her chest, and she knew, whether the future brought peace or war, she would no longer face it alone. To be continued. Asterisk. The night deepened, the stars hidden behind heavy clouds, and the wind grew sharper. Inside the ruined tower, the lantern burned low, its flame struggling to survive against the draft. The alien girl sat close to the wall, her body curled tight. Though her silver eyes refused to close, sleep tugged at her, but fear kept her awake. Fear that tomorrow would bring hunters. Fear that her past was already following her. The human sat across from her, his back against the stone. His hands wrapped in cloth from the climb. His gaze never wavered, even as his body begged for rest. He kept watch over her, as if she were the most important thing in the world. Every time the lantern flickered, his jaw tightened, his senses sharpening against the dark. The girl broke the silence, her voice barely above a whisper. "They will come." "I know it," she said, her hands trembling. "They always come when I think I am safe." Her words carried more weight than the crumbling tower itself. The human met her gaze, calm but firm. "Then let them," he said. "We'll face them." Together, the girl shook her head quickly, fear flashing in her eyes. "No. You don't understand. They won't just try to kill me. They will try to kill you too. And they won't stop until they succeed." The human leaned forward, his tone steady. "Then they will learn I am not so easy to break." His eyes burned. With quiet fire, determination shining even in the weak glow, the girl stared at him, her lips parting as if to argue. But the words died in her throat. Suddenly, the air shifted. The night carrying a new sound, footsteps, faint but clear. Crunching on the gravel outside the tower, the girl's body stiffened instantly, her breath catching. "They're here," she whispered, her voice shaking. The human's hand moved to his belt, pulling a short blade from its sheath. His body tensed, every muscle ready, his eyes scanning the dark entrance below. The lantern flame flickered violently, as if it too felt the danger. The girl pressed her back against the wall, her chest rising and falling in quick, shallow breaths. Shadows moved at the base of the tower, shapes slipping in and out of the darkness. Their voices carried, harsh and cruel, speaking a language sharp like broken glass. The girl understood every word, and her blood ran cold. "They say they will drag me out alive to make me suffer before the end," she whispered, trembling. The human's jaw tightened, his grip on the blade firm. "Not while I'm here," he said, his voice calm but edged like steel. The sound of stones scraping echoed as someone began to climb the tower walls. The girl flinched, her hands clutching her arms tightly. The human moved closer to her, his body forming a shield between her and the threat. "Stay behind me," he said quietly, his voice steady despite the storm building outside. The girl shook her head, her tears burning her eyes. "They'll kill you. You don't know what they are capable of." The human's eyes never left the dark entrance as he whispered back, "Then let them try." His heart pounded. But his voice carried no fear, only a fierce will to protect. The girl's throat tightened, her mind torn between terror and awe. The first shadow appeared, pulling itself into the tower's broken doorway. Its form was twisted, its eyes glowing faintly, its sharp weapon catching the lantern's light. More followed, their movements. Quick and silent, the human raised his blade, his body steady. The girl gasped, stepping back until the wall pressed against her. Her past screamed at her to run, to hide, to give in. But her heart fought with a new voice, the human's voice. Echoing in her mind, "You're not nothing. You matter." The clash came fast, steel against steel. Sparks flying as the human struck the first attacker. His movements were not perfect, but they were fierce. Every strike carrying raw strength and will. The enemy snarled, stumbling back, but another lunged forward. The human twisted, his blade cutting across, his breath sharp. The girl watched with wide eyes, her body frozen in fear and awe. No one had ever fought for her before. No one had ever bled in her defense. The human's arm was cut, blood soaking through his cloth, but he did not falter. He pushed forward, driving the attackers back step by step. One enemy shouted, their voice filled with rage, "They say you are worthless, that no one should fight for you." The girl translated weakly, her heart clenched. But then she saw the human's eyes flash. "They are wrong," he shouted back, though he did not understand their tongue. His voice pure defiance. The girl's chest heaved, her tears streaming. The human staggered under a heavy blow, blood marking his side, but even then he turned, his head toward her, his voice rough but steady. "You must choose now. Run from them forever, or stand with me." Her body shook violently, her mind screaming to run, to hide, to let him fall. But something deeper rose, stronger than fear. Her fists clenched, her breath steadied, and for the first time in years, fire burned in her silver eyes. She stepped forward, her voice trembling but filled with courage. "I will not run anymore," she whispered, her voice growing louder. "I will not let them take everything again." The human's lips curved into a faint, bloody smile. "Then we fight together," he said. The enemy circled, the lantern burning low. The tower groaned under the weight of battle, and in the heart of the storm, a broken girl and a weary human stood side by side. Darkness had come for them, but they were no longer facing it alone. To be continued. The ruined tower shook with every clash, sparks flying as blades struck stone and steel. The human fought with desperate strength, his body bleeding from cuts across his arms and side. Yet his eyes never wavered, his stance never broke. Every strike was for the alien girl behind him. The enemies snarled, their twisted faces glowing in the lantern's weak light, their rage focused on her. The girl pressed herself against the wall, her chest heaving, her hands trembling. Fear screamed inside her to hide, to let the human take all the pain, to let him fall so she could slip away. But something burned stronger than fear now, something his words had lit deep inside her. She could no longer watch him bleed alone. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark, silver fire rising as she pushed herself to her feet. Her knees shook, but she stepped forward. each step breaking chains that had bound her heart for years. The human stumbled under a heavy blow, blood splattering the stones, and then he heard her voice. Not broken, but sharp and fierce. "Enough," she shouted. Her voice trembling, yet filled with new power. The attackers paused, their heads snapping toward her. Surprise flashing across their twisted faces, the girl's hands curled into fists. Her voice stronger this time. "I am not nothing. I am not your prey. I will not run anymore." The human's heart surged as he heard her words. Even through the pain, his body screamed to collapse. But her voice gave him strength. He turned his head just enough to see her standing tall, fire burning in her silver eyes. And for a brief moment, he smiled, bloodied but proud. The enemies roared in anger, rushing forward again, but this time, the girl moved too, no longer frozen in fear. She grabbed a fallen spear from the floor. Its shaft cracked but still strong. Her grip tightened, and she thrust it forward with a cry. The first attacker staggered back, the spear grazing across his chest. It was not a perfect strike, but it was enough to show she would not kneel anymore. The human pushed forward beside her, his blade cutting down another. Together, they forced the shadows back, two broken souls now standing as one. The battle raged in the hollow tower, their breaths heavy, their bodies battered, but step by step. The enemies faltered, their snarls turning to fear. The girl struck again, her arms trembling, but her spirit burning brighter than ever. And with each strike, her voice grew louder. "You will not take me," she shouted. "I belong to myself." The final enemy lunged, his weapon raised high. The human caught the blow, his blade locking against it, his knees buckling under the weight. Before he could fall, the girl drove the broken spear forward with all her strength. The enemy fell, his weapon clattering against the stones. Silence echoing in his place. The lantern flickered, casting long shadows across the bodies that lay still. The human collapsed to one knee, his chest heaving, blood dripping from his wounds. The girl dropped the broken spear, her body shaking as tears streamed down her face. But these were not tears of despair. They were tears of release. She stumbled toward him, falling to her knees beside him. Her hands pressed against his shoulders, her voice breaking. "You fought for me. You bled for me. Why?" The human lifted his head weakly, his eyes tired but steady. "Because you're worth it," he whispered, his voice raw but true. The girl's heart shattered and healed all at once, her sobs choking her words. No one ever said that. No one ever believed it. Until you, she pressed her forehead against his shoulder, her tears soaking his torn clothes for the first time in her life. She felt safe in someone's presence, not because the danger was gone, but because she was no longer facing it alone. Her chains, though invisible, cracked and broke with every heartbeat. The human reached up with a trembling hand, brushing her hair back gently. "You chose to fight," he said, softly. "That was you, not me." His voice was weak but filled with pride. "You stepped back from the edge. You found the strength inside you." Her lips quivered as she whispered, "I only found it because you saw me." The human gave a faint smile, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. "Then we found each other," he murmured, and with those words, he leaned against the wall, his breath slowing but steady. The girl stayed close, her hand gripping his tightly, refusing to let go. She looked out at the night sky, the storm passing, the first stars breaking through the clouds. For years, those stars had mocked her, cold and distant, but now, for the first time, they looked like witnesses to her survival. The tower still stood. Broken, the night still carried shadows, but in her chest burned something she thought she had lost forever: hope. She turned her gaze back to the human, her voice soft but strong. You saved me from the edge. Now I will save you from the dark." The human gave a faint nod, his hand squeezing hers weakly. And the girl, once ready to leap into nothing, now held him as if he was her everything. The promise they had made had survived the storm, and with it, they stepped into a new beginning. The dawn would come, the world would still be cruel. Enemies would still hunt them, but she was no longer the girl on the edge of the tower. She was someone who had chosen to live, and someone who had found a reason to fight, and the human by her side was no longer just a stranger, but the start of a new story. Together, broken yet unyielding, they would face whatever came, for when darkness came, they had lit a flame no storm could put out, and so the girl, once ready to end it all, now whispered into the dawn, "This is not the end. This is only the beginning."